That's what I'm worried about. That was my kids.
My apologies.
Should I go back to question whether there's any other public comment?
Yes.
And Claire is here.
Yes. So I'm gonna go back to citizen comment on any subject not on agenda for those calling in.
Well, this is Dennis Sullivan. I had some comments about the police procedure, but I guess that's going to be covered during the meeting tonight.
It's on the agenda. Okay, thank you. All right, we do have the applicant here. Thank you for joining us, and
I did see it.
property owner. If you'd like to give us a little thumbnail sketch of your business and what your plans are, that'd be great.
Sure. So we have 4 full-time artists. So we're not that big of a crew. We are appointment only based, so we don't have that much foot traffic or parking needs throughout the day. We all come with our own already built clientele. I've been running a tattoo shop already for 6 years. I have been loving it, but I want to stay with the appointment only model. And my current business partner is moving towards a walk-in shop. As a mom of 2, I like to be home for dinner and I don't want to have to work crazy hours. Over the past 6 years running it, we've raised over 10,000 for like local organizations we care about, and we plan to keep that as a main part of our model moving forward. Having fundraisers, we used to do it every month, now we'll probably do it like once every fiscal quarter. And that's the only time that we would see an increase in foot traffic. And that's usually one day. Other than that, a lot of our clients are also very into the arts. We are hoping to have a few like drop-in classes with them, but that would also be just during regular business hours. Other than that, we just want to do a good job. We have all of our sanitation stuff already lined up. I've been through the process of getting licenses before. I make all of my artists go through bloodborne pathogen certification, even though it's not required by the state, even though it maybe should be. And yeah, we just run a very nice, clean, safe, fun tattoo shop.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Anything we want to know more of? All right.
What are your hours?
So because we are appointment only, we don't have listed hours. For the first at least 4 months, we are planning on being open noon to 6 Wednesday through Saturday, in case people from the community want to come in and meet us or see the shop or like just figure out where it is. Especially because we're in such a high traffic area, we thought it would be nice for people to be able to pop in. But because we don't really do walk-in services, we don't have like post hours. For the most part, I usually start work at 10 a.m. and I leave by 5 to get home to my family. Most of the other people will stay until 8 if it's like really late, but for the most part, we are operating a lot earlier than most shops in town.
Okay, so nothing real late, like
No.
midnight.
No, never. Yeah, all of us are like more seasoned in the field, are very set in our careers and want to have like actual outside lives and families. Want to be able to do that too. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next, so thank you. You're approved. All right. Discuss,
So we voted, did we?
We did vote. Discussion with the village attorney regarding police pursuit policy.
So in Chris Nelson, Village Council.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you don't want to stay for this? Come on.
Back on September 3rd, through email correspondence, Greg had asked if we could have a little bit more, have the village attorney here for a village board meeting to get better clarity on the potential civil legal liability and legal exposure when it comes to vehicle pursuits. He felt that the board in general could benefit from a conversation, specifically referencing Dolton, Illinois case and others like it, and how it could potentially apply to Maple Bluff. Just a general desire to better understand the potential for civil cases to be brought in federal versus state court. And so the board has a better understanding of kind of that liability conversation. He had sent that email to myself and also to Mike Wittenweiler. Mike replied and had said that he agreed, wanted to have that, make sure that conversation took place at the village board. And just also to any other legal issues arising out of Dalton at the time with its municipal government and police department for context, because it's been brought up as a case that the board should take into consideration. And so I asked Chris to come here this evening and be ready to discuss vehicle police pursuits. I also provided him with our pursuit policy, and he conducted an analysis of that policy, and he's here to discuss that tonight too.
All right, thank you, Tanner, President O'Driscoll and trustees. I am here to talk tonight about potential civil liability in cases of vehicle pursuits. I'm not here to talk about the policy behind vehicle pursuits. That's sort of beyond the purview or scope of why I'm here. It's up to you and the police department to determine the village's policy on police pursuits. But I did review the village's policy as just police department policy 307, which addresses vehicle pursuits. And I think there's some important features of the policy, and I'll just briefly summarize them. One, the policy states that whether to engage in a motor vehicle pursuit is a crucial decision. It states that no officer or supervisor will be criticized or disciplined for not engaging in a vehicle pursuit. Pursuits are evaluated based on the totality of the circumstances that are reasonably available at the time of the pursuit. The officer's conduct during the pursuit must be objectively reasonable. The fact that an officer is operating an emergency vehicle with lights and sirens doesn't excuse them from the duty to drive with reasonable care. There are multiple, around 15 factors listed in the policy about when an officer should consider or may consider engaging in a pursuit. And there's similar guidance provided to officers in the policy about when to terminate a pursuit. And guidance is provided on pursuit techniques based on the circumstances and pursuit. And most importantly, training on pursuits must occur at least every other year. The village's policy for police pursuits meets all the requirements of the model policy, but that's been adopted by the Wisconsin Administrative Code LES 3.07. So the state requirements are met within the model state requirements are met within the village's policy, and the village's policy, in fact, goes beyond that to include additional factors and considerations that are not included in the state model policy. So regular training is required, and the policy provides guidance to the officers on when to initiate a pursuit. But the policy also makes clear that this is a discretionary decision for the officers. And the discretionary decision aspect of it is important because that gets to municipal liability. When an officer of a municipality or an employee engages in a discretionary action, generally speaking, the municipality has immunity for the action taken in the discretion. Typically, and that's statutory under Wisconsin Statute 983.80, parent 4, discretionary acts that a municipality engages in does not result in municipal liability. There are, some exceptions to that, but they're narrow, and typically speaking, that's a strict rule in Wisconsin that if it's a discretionary action, there's no municipal liability. That relates, though, to if injuries arise out of a vehicle pursuit, that's a statute that applies to general tort liability. The question is, what happens if it's determined to be a constitutional violation? And that's when the Manel versus Department of Social Services of the City of New York comes into play. Talks about when Section 1983 lawsuits, and those are lawsuits in which a person can file suit against an individual municipal employee for violating their constitutional rights, when those can be applied to the municipality itself. And under Manel, a local government itself may be sued when its employees execute a policy, custom, or practice that inflicts a constitutional injury. Now, this is not just whether or not somebody was injured. The violation in this case would have to rise to the level of a constitutional violation. So think of unreasonable seizures. This is a type of situation in which the village is attempting to seize an individual. So the question isn't, whether or not a seizure took place. The question is whether or not the seizure was unreasonable. And that's when the scope of the force or the conduct that an officer may use in engaging a pursuit comes into play. The question is here whether or not there is a policy customer practice that would lead to a constitutional violation. Bluntly, I don't see one. I think the policy that is in place and that the village trains on provides officers with instruction on when they can engage in vehicle pursuits, makes clear that they do not have to and cannot be disciplined for not engaging in a vehicle pursuit, and provides them with regular instruction on that policy. So there's nothing that I've seen to indicate that there's a policy customer practice in the village that would constitute a constitutional violation in any way. Lots of times with vehicle pursuits specifically, it can arise to or be considered a use of force. And there's a Supreme Court case on use of force. It's the standard one, as Tanner knows, Graham v. Connor. And that requires a totality of the circumstance analysis on whether or not the use of force was reasonable. Talks about the severity of crime at issue, whether or not there was a threat to the public or the officer's safety. All of those are factors within the village's pursuit policy. So the village's pursuit policy mirrors that standard and in fact trains and teaches on that standard that's articulated in Graham versus Connor. So whether or not there's Manel liability, frankly, under your policy, I don't see it. And I want to talk a little bit about the Dalton case, since Tanner raised that specifically. Now, this was a case from a few years ago. An individual with 2 passengers was driving in the village of Dalton, Illinois, and they came upon a controlled intersection. A police officer was there, rolled through the intersection. That was the only violation that was observed at the time, and the police officer pursued the vehicle. Vehicle took off at a high rate of speed because the driver did not have a driver's license and was intoxicated, and later testified he was trying to evade the officer. Average speeds were around 68 miles an hour during this pursuit. It ended when the vehicle crashed. There were 2 passengers. One was killed and one was severely injured to the point where he would need lifelong medical care. The survivor and the estate of the individual who died sued the village police department for willful and wrongful conduct. Interestingly enough, when the case went to a jury, the police department prevailed on that. The jury found that the pursuit was reasonable in this case. The reason the village got hit with a $33 million verdict was that they refused to turn over dash cam video from that everyone admitted in the case should have been available to it. This incident occurred on October 9th of 2016. They received a preservation letter on October 17th of 2016 and a court order on October 21st, 2016 to preserve the dash cam video. They did not do that. They did not do that, and they refused to turn it over. And that was the basis for the jury verdict of $33.5 million. Now, on appeal, Dalton said, well, that couldn't have been it. The jury did that because they had a judgment based on the conduct of the pursuit, and those things should have been separated. Ultimately, they lost that appeal. But it's important to note that the verdict related to the evidentiary violation, not the conduct of the officers. That was an interesting detail in that case. There are some aspects about Dalton that were interesting. From a factual perspective, it had the highest rate of pursuits in the state of Illinois, and there were some other facts at play, but none of that led to a jury verdict indicating that police officers were wrong in engaging in pursuit. It was the conduct after the fact that led to the verdict. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about and answer any questions you may have, but I have reviewed the policy, and the policy meets state requirements and it appears to, in particular, make clear that these pursuits are discretionary decisions of the officers and they're trained in order to exercise that discretion.
Do we know how Dalton paid that? Did their insurance cover it?
10.5 million of their insurance covered it, but then they were on the hook for 23.5 or 23 above that. They're still in the process of figuring out what to do. There's a lot of other interesting situations going on in Dalton too. This was not the only one, so they were in a hard way for a while.
Okay.
But yeah, they have a $23 million judgment that's on the backs of the taxpayers.
So how did they arrive at $33 million in damage for that? I'm struggling with that. Like how did they justify that payment?
Part of it can be punitive, right?
I didn't see that this verdict was based on punitive damages. That being said, it does appear to relate to long-term injuries and things like that. It has to be, otherwise, why would they be different for the two individuals?
So was the judge responsible for determining the damages in that case?
It was a jury verdict.
So the jury determined the damages after determining that the police pursuit was reasonable.
Correct.
Right, okay. So it does seem like the jury was doing something odd that.
It's very clear that they wanted to punish the village, and based on the village's post-accident conduct, that may be understandable. Another interesting fact of this case is both of the police officers who acknowledge that there should have been this video, should have been automatically uploaded and things like that. They both were impeached when they were on the witness stand, and basically their pre-trial testimony did not match their testimony at trial. There were a lot of things that went wrong for the village at this trial.
So was there potentially some sort of facet of the law that prevented the jury from ruling on the conduct, and then they just sort of like took it out on the.
No, they
kind of what happened.
They
Probably?
did rule on the conduct, and they found for the village on the
But
conduct.
but it seems like it almost like they probably wanted to rule the other way, and then but is there some reason?
I can't say that they wanted to rule the other way just based on the fact that they didn't. They had the opportunity and they decided not to. So the other thing is, because of the standard, it was willful and wanton conduct. So it couldn't have been just pure negligence that the officers engaged in. It had to rise to the level of being an intentional act. And it probably didn't rise to that level. And that's another aspect that brings us back to the Wisconsin law. That discretionary aspect of it, that's a standard under which the village isn't liable for the negligent actions of its employees. Under the state statute as well, the village is not liable for the willful and wanton actions of its employees. However, if there's an individual judgment entered against an employee, the amount above the insurance payout would be the village's responsibility.
And have you reviewed our policy regarding dash cam? How long we retain dash cam footage?
I have not.
We have a minimum retention. We have a policy that governs that. It's predicated on state law. We have a minimum retention period of 120 days for all camera footage.
And did the Dalton case, did they find that it was intentional that the footage was destroyed, or?
I didn't see that there was a finding that it was intentional, but it was based on a spoliation of evidence theory, so it had to be at least somewhat intentional.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
And clearly that was the only basis for the verdict,
Mhm.
the $33 million. But like you said, it seems like they were sympathetic
Mhm.
plaintiffs and they were looking to
Mhm.
give them money.
Mhm.
And that was what was available.
That
Mhm.
seems really,
Mhm.
yeah. Or that the village had such a bad reputation. It was that the jury was probably trying to punish them some way.
Mhm.
Well, and if they couldn't prove that it was willful and intentional, we still wanted to, so they couldn't rise to that level, they couldn't issue a judgment on that, so they found
Correct.
something else, that's what
Yeah.
it sounds like.
Well, but their conduct gave them the avenue to
Yeah.
find something else. I could assure you that if the village of Maple Bluff got an evidence preservation letter or order, it would abide by it. So, yeah.
So our policy meets or exceeds state guidelines.
In my review, yes.
I have a question.
The question, Paul, will be, and help me clarify, for the board to address, Attorney Chris. So really, this presentation is for our village attorney to address the board's question regarding liability.
So you can take public questions, they
Sure.
would probably be oriented towards the board.
Yeah, so happy to hear your question, Paula. Just orient it towards the board, please.
If a police officer knowingly, as in the case of Brandon Gully, in which the person who was being pursued ultimately died, if an officer specifically defies, even given discretion, village policies in that he went the wrong way down a one-way street over a hill, is that something that the board is willing to address in the future, given potential liability? Given the wide discretion that is given to all the officers, and apparently a culture that may have risen up around that, how is the board prepared to deal with those eventualities, especially given the damages that people have suffered in our pursuit cases beyond Brandon Gully, you know, the one that happened on the Beltway, the one that happened at Fordham Road. So is that something the board is willing to take up as a public safety issue?
Well, I'll answer for the board. You know, we've heard from concerned residents like yourself that have concern over our police pursuit policy and you know, objectively would like us to change it or don't agree with it. We've reviewed it, our policy with Tanner, our police chief, with the police committee, and now with our attorney. We've also reviewed it with our insurance company as well. And so, you know, I'm not hearing a lot of outcry from the community. I'm hearing a few concerned citizens like yourself. And I, as a board, stand behind our pursuit policy. I stand before our police and our police committees and our board. So, yes.
Kevin, if I may, I don't think, with all due respect, I don't think that you can make a statement for the board without the board taking action. I don't disagree.
This isn't an action item, right?
Yeah, this isn't an action item, but I would suggest this issue has been going back and forth 3 years now.
It's going back and forth with a couple people.
Yeah, but anyway, it's still back and forth. We're considering it. We're getting, I think this is a great step to get Chris in here and get that on the record. I would like the police committee and you to consider putting this on the board agenda sometime in the future where we can take a vote and take action. And if people don't like it, they can run for office and potentially
We
reverse,
also have
you
a
know,
strategic plan that we're going through, so we can. there's a
Yeah,
lot of
but I
opportunity to
think
discuss it.
that might put some closure on this. Obviously, not everybody will be happy with however the village board votes, but I think we know enough and we got a lot of good information tonight. Can take action and move on.
Yeah, I've got a couple ideas that I might wanna put on the board's agenda and have us discuss as proposals in the future. I think there's potentially, it's not a yay or nay. There's a middle way potentially, and there's maybe a way to buy down risk and satisfy multiple sides. I think this discussion, let's focus on the liability question, and my purpose in asking our attorney here was just to understand it so that we all heard the message. And I think we should plan on taking up the broader issue, in a future meeting. But I had a couple questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
So was there any other cases other than the Dalton case that we should be aware of, that you're aware of, that would be relevant?
No, not specifically. I did review many cases related to this going into this, but there's nothing that really stands out. I mean, obviously, the worse the facts are, the more likely there's going to be an issue, because if there's bad facts, there could be a constitutional violation. But if the question is, whether or not, in the cases I reviewed, something like Manel liability is found when there really is an established customer practice that a municipality has, whether it be written or unwritten. And there's nothing I'm aware of that would indicate that's the case here. And in fact, the express policy that they're trained on, that the police officers are trained on, makes clear it's a discretionary decision, multiple factor analysis, totality of the circumstances, and again, they have the express right not to pursue at any time.
Are there differences in Illinois versus Wisconsin that would change this case?
I'm sure there are a lot of places, a lot of states have strong municipal protections as far as liability are concerned, like liability for negligence, things like that. I don't know what Illinois are specifically, so I can't speak to that, but it is fairly common to have a negligence liability shield for municipalities to prevent, runaway property taxes and things like that.
So my scenario is, this happens, something like this happens in April. There's a pursuit. There's a fatality, they're a bystander, someone in the vehicle. We get taken to court. The attorney for the plaintiffs, they use the fact that we have, an average of 50 pursuits per year in Maple Bluff, which is, significantly, larger than any other municipality our size. It's, I think it's double what Madison has. They use the fact that we had a fatality in a pursuit within the last 3 years. It was deemed to be like, there was no violation of policy in that fatality. So what is the risk, given some of those facts, that, you'd have a jury who would be sympathetic to, I know that's a tough question. I'm not an attorney, but I'm just trying to think of a scenario here.
Yeah,
It's about risk assessment.
absolutely. And I think kind of like the policy being a totality of the circumstances thing, it would really be a fact specific analysis.
Yeah, the Officers Act. So the officers driving 80 miles an hour through the bluff, hit somebody that's on a bike.
And there's, it depends on a variety of things. For example, why was the officer doing that? What was the pursuit over? Was the pursuit in pursuit of a reported felony with a firearm, or was it something to a lesser degree? There's so many factors that go into this. It's pretty hard to say what it is. If the question is whether or not there's anything inherent in the village's policy that would lead to liability, that I can say there's not. Okay.
So it sounds to me like, so what I'm trying to understand is the policy isn't necessarily what creates the risk, right? But regardless of the policy, when we have a pursuit, if there's an injury or fatality, there's a risk of civil liability, right? There's a non-zero risk.
There will always be a non-zero risk.
So
You,
the
you
more,
could, you could have a policy that says we don't pursue under any circumstances, and you could wind up getting sued for something. There's never a non-zero risk.
but it sounds like the more pursuits we have, the higher the risk is going to be, right?
Well, and you know, the fact that you have a police force makes it possible that you could be sued over any police action. You know, it's you know, of course, but that's true of anything.
But if we have 10 pursuits a year versus 50 pursuits a year, then the risk of liability of civil liability from a dude is right, just objectively 5 times. Like if each pursuit we have creates an additional risk, right?
I think each pursuit is looked at individually,
Yeah.
so I can't say that that would be the case, but.
Except if it goes to the custom and usage of the policy and the training of the policy.
Yes, and
Right.
if they are trained on this policy, like they are every other year, what I can say is that the policy itself is not going to lead to liability.
And does something like, I just heard somebody said, driving down the wrong way down a one-way street. Is it against our is that a factor in our policy that the perpetrator might go the wrong way, not a one-way street, but that may be a factor to terminate the pursuit, that kind of thing?
It absolutely could be a factor to terminate a pursuit, and there are multiple listed factors within the policy about considerations about when to term a pursuit, and a blanket statement in there that just because you're operating an emergency vehicle in a pursuit doesn't relieve the officer of the duty to drive with due care. So.
All right, so that's an example of a type of factor that would cause, hopefully, us to mitigate the harm in the people around the
So-
pursuing vehicle.
Just on the subject of risk, though, we're talking about, I think the postulation that we get rid of risk if there's no pursuits is kind of
No,
counterintuitive.
I'm
yeah.
going to try to understand.
Yeah, I'm speaking more to Greg's comments.
Yeah.
No,
So, but let me just finish. So if we cut down the number of pursuits, yeah, we probably reduce the risk of getting a suit brought by somebody injured, is our pursuee being injured and thinking. But in all of these, when somebody takes off, all of a sudden they're operating a dangerous weapon. So if they go ahead and hit, an innocent bystander without being pursued, the village could get sued for not taking action, not protecting people by having you can get sued for anything.
Yeah, although
And
like,
I-
it's outside the scope, but what the study shows that when someone's not pursued, they usually slow down within like 3 flat blocks. Like, so the.
So you have somebody who's doing dangerous things still out there. I mean,
I know we don't need to want to debate this tonight, but.
Yeah, let's
I think
just-
we ought to put it
yeah.
on the agenda.
Stick to liability questions for our attorney.
yeah,
We're always liable.
Well, if I could just say though, from the liability standpoint in the conversation, there's been a few things that have been brought up. I just want to make clear. There's a few variables that are really important from a leadership standpoint within our department. What the most dangerous thing that anybody does on a given day is get into a vehicle and drive it. It is statistically speaking, it's the number one way that someone's going to get injured. And so that's forefront on my mind about what I put my officers, the situations that I put my officers in, and the difficult tasks that I ask them to do every day. This is why we train not once every 2 years, but we train twice a year on vehicle pursuits and emergency vehicle operations, which is why we review every single my supervisor reviews every single pursuit and provides a memo on that pursuit. And then if it warrants it, I will look at that pursuit as well. And it's why we outfit our vehicles with the best tires, sirens that are loud and have multi-decibels so that you can hear them from multiple, not only the loud siren, but the low siren that gathers attention. Because it's absolutely dangerous when someone's driving 80 miles an hour down a 25-mile-an-hour roadway. It's not safe that a police vehicle drives fast in those circumstances either, but it reduces the risk through using that equipment. training our officers well. They have lights and sirens that catches people's attention and they can be aware of their surroundings and what's happening. So it's the same, it's a lot of what's in the policy and in our practices is specifically designed to address the risk inherent in these types of activities.
So, I mean, back to my point, Jim, it was really that each pursuit creates a liability.
Right.
So that's what's in, specific to that pursuit. And then there are other risks outside of that, right? But that each of those pursuits does create a liability. That's just kind of.
So does just being a police officer in Madison
Yeah.
or Maple Bluff.
It's all about.
All of it
risk.
is
It's about
risk.
risk management and
And
balancing.
it's training, exactly what Tanner's doing, and
Yeah.
it's about policy, which is exactly what we've covered here.
Yeah, it's risk management, and risk management is about balancing risks, right? And
Which
there's
is
a
what
risk,
they're doing.
there's a risk created by a pursuit, there's a risk created by not pursuing, there's a risk created, and it's like looking at what is the balance of that. And so I think what some of our citizens are concerned about is the risk created by the pursuit. 50 pursuits a year, there's a risk that seems to be greater than the risk of.
It would be interesting to see exactly where those pursuits are, because I think when looking at some of the stuff, most of it is outside of true village kind of residents, right? You're talking a lot of like Sherman Avenue, Commercial Avenue, all those places there. So I think that would be interesting to see.
Does our liability increase when we pursue outside the village? Is there any difference for us?
No.
Okay,
I comment whenever it's like appropriate.
go ahead.
So first, I want to thank Kevin and the board for putting this topic on the agenda. I want to thank Ms. Chris.
Mhm.
I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I wanted to learn about this, and you talked about the policy itself, and it's very well written, and it doesn't leave a lot of legal liability. So thank you for that. The other aspect you talked about, I've heard like 3 different words: practice, custom, culture type of thing. And you a couple times you said you're not aware of anything. And I just wanted to raise some things I'm aware of that may or may not be liabilities for us. So the first one was our pursuit rate per capita is very high. And instead of saying very high, I will say it is 70 times that of Dalton. And you had said Dalton was the highest in Illinois.
Hmm.
So we could be off the charts with our pursuit rate per capita because we're so small. I know we're 500 times that of Madison. So this gets away from policy and it's on culture, right? So I'm just going to say facts, right? So the next point I want to bring up is like our policy, do we ever violate it? And I asked the question of Tanner in regards to data in the Cap Times story, where they mentioned 178 pursuits over I think that period was 4 years. And I specifically asked them, did any of those pursuits result in a discipline violation to the officer? And after the fact, I realized he didn't answer my question because he answered it with, in my tenure, there's been one. So what is your tenure? Is that like 11 years or how long have you been with us?
I've been in my current role since December 2nd, 2019.
Is that what you meant by tenure when you said tenure?
Likely.
Okay, so of those 178, did any result in, so that was the question too. I don't know the answer to that. I will say I got the memo for the Brand New Gully pursuit. These are just facts. And I have the video. In that video, the dash cam doesn't show that car until after they clear so it starts on Sherman, turns on Lakewood, goes up Kensington.
So address the board and in terms of any questions we can ask in terms of liability to our attorneys.
So it's all around our attorney's awareness on our culture. And these are facts I'm trying to give us that someone could look back and judge our culture, right? So he went through the intersection of Roxbury, our police officer, at 72 miles an hour on a Sunday at 9 a.m. He then went through the intersection of Oxford at 75 miles an hour. This is a freeway stop. the original offense was an erratic move, so it wasn't any violent felony, anything like that. Then he drove through the parking lot and down the wrong way, reached a speed of 47 miles an hour down the wrong way in Maple.
Is there a question or just a recitation of fact? I'm trying to be polite here and get a question.
Kevin, I'd like to hear this.
The questions around his awareness of our cultures. He said, "I'm not aware of anything." So the review of that stated that no violations occurred on our policy. The last thing I want to talk about is this idea of minor offense and pursuits. And at the last police committee meeting I went to, and there's a recording of this, so you can dismiss me, but please look at the recording. There was quite a conversation on that particular pursuit around the offense in like the value of apprehending someone right away for that erratic move versus the risk to public safety. And in that meeting, Mike Wittenweiler states that, I want to get this right, our rules state that we will pursue, it doesn't matter what the offense is. And then later, Eric McLeod states that the erratic move does not come into the analysis, i.e. Creating potentially a culture where the leadership of our police committee don't consider the offense and imply that our police should be pursuing for minor offenses. So I think those are the points around culture that I wanted to make. That was in a public meeting. I have it up on YouTube in a 2.5 minute snippet. This stuff's all there after the fact. If there were a trial, someone could look at that pursuit Reading Gully and the fact that no violations were made. Someone could look at our pursuit rate of 500 times Madison, 570 times Dalton. We're possibly the highest pursuit rate per capita in the country. I don't know if anybody knows what we're at. And this idea that our police leadership doesn't think our police should, or at least they stated that publicly in a recorded meeting, that the offense doesn't matter for the police when they're making this. They have to make it over and over and over. They have to balance the offense and the value of apprehending someone right then and there versus the risk to public safety. So those were my culture facts that I wanted the board to be aware of. And I would love it if they would ask our lawyer if he was aware of those culture facts and if any of those were concerning.
Thank you. Does culture come into play in your analysis? You analyzed liability and our policy.
Mm-hmm.
So the broader, if you could state the question more broadly.
Well, I kind of got a sub question. Do the facts as stated establish a culture?
Facts.
Number one, the customs and practices of a department can be an unwritten policy that can lead to liability under Manel. That being said, Manel precedents state very clearly that a single instance of unconstitutional conduct does not lead to municipal liability. So if there's one incident that might have, and I'm not saying it did, but if someone were to determine that an unconstitutional action was taken by an individual officer, that specifically does not constitute impugning the entire establishing a custom culture or practice.
And do the opinions of committee members or board members, the comments of them, recorded comments of them, establish a culture, evidence of a pervasive culture?
That I don't know. But I did want to say that a single act does not rise to the level of establishing a customer practice.
So the question about committee or trustee members' statements creating liability for the village.
Well, if we're talking about a situation in which someone was trying to show that there was a custom or practice of pursuing in all circumstances, which I believe is what is
Like allegedly said, but he
yes,
was wrong.
like allegedly said, but if that were the case, you know, that could theoretically be a problem, but it could be a problem only if that resulted in a constitutional violation occurring. So theoretically, you could pursue in every single case, but there might not be liability. Now, would that increase the risk of liability? Probably, but you could pursue in every case and not have liability. The question is whether or not an unconstitutional action has been taken against an individual. And if there is, then there's potential liability for the municipality if that person can establish that the action was actually the result of the customer practice of the department.
Is there a legal definition of pursuit? Are we talking about something that happens when we talk about pursuits?
There is
Is
a
it-
definition.
Are we talking, so the number of pursuits we've been involved in? Is that? How are those defined under who's ever keeping this statistic?
So-
Did we just follow somebody who refused to pull over? Whether they were going under the speed limit or not?
So that's not the actual definition, but that references the definition. Sorry, Jim. So, sorry, can you restate your question one more time?
So is there a legal
Sure.
definition of pursuits? I
Mhm.
mean, you know, Ryan talked about this, you know, and other people have referred to the lot of pursuits that
Mhm.
we've been engaged in. Were those all high speed? And if so, what's high speed? Is it anything over the speed limit? Is it?
So, so there's a very technical definition for what constitutes a pursuit. I won't be able to cite it for you right now. But it's essentially when an officer engages their lights and sirens and the suspect attempts to evade them by increasing their speed, taking some sort of evasive actions to evade arrest. There's a technical definition. When a Maple Bluff police officer, so I'll talk about most of our pursuits would be our own pursuits, not mutual aid to another agency, because our agency will also be involved in pursuits where we're providing mutual aid to another agency who's in a pursuit as well. And so when our agency, typically how one would occur is officer attempts to make a traffic stop, activates lights and sirens. That vehicle then or that driver and that vehicle take some action. They either don't stop, and at that point, the officer probably wouldn't initiate a pursuit because they haven't taken any evasive action or done something to present themselves as trying to get away. We'll call that a slow to stop, right? So you have these types of stops where for different reasons, people are just really slow to stop. Sometimes they don't know that there's an officer behind them, things of that nature. But in a lot of those cases that do turn into pursuits, they increase their speed, they start stair stepping, they take evasive action, they drive the wrong way in the street, things of that nature, go over curbs. As soon as the officer perceives that they are in a pursuit, they notify dispatch that they are in a pursuit, and that's how it gets triggered that they're in a pursuit. And they've made that analysis at that point that they're gonna engage in a pursuit, and then whether or not they're gonna continue that pursuit. And that's as outlined in our policy. That officer will continue to make that assessment. Out of the approximate, I'll say, I think it was 53 last year, 53 pursuits that our agency was involved in, both our own and mutual aid pursuits. We terminated about half of those. So let's say, you know, out of the 50, 25 were actually pursuits that we did not terminate.
Including the one that ended in Fordham, in the crash on Fordham. Is that correct? If I remember correctly.
Oh, so that was a pursuit that had been terminated. And so the officer had terminated that pursuit, and one of the actions that officers take after they terminate is they return to normal speeds, they turn off their lights and sirens, they return to normal speeds, and they continue to travel in the direction of the vehicle, because more often than not, vehicles crash. And so you want to be there to make sure from a public safety standpoint that, you know, you're there to address a crash. So they'll go for a set period of distance, a non-established set period of distance, and then if they don't find the vehicle or there's not a crash, they'll return back to their normal patrol activities.
Thank
So
you.
you're saying that number that you're stating about 178 pursuits, half of which could have just been terminated, and we don't know the outcome of all those pursuits.
And
Where
I,
those numbers are coming
and I
from.
do have statistics on pursuits that I'm,
So maybe
Yeah,
it's
we
not
do know.
as bad.
we have the data for these. For
Any
pursuits.
further questions about liability or attorney?
Yeah, I do.
Village attorney.
So I was curious, and I have the numbers right here. It's 53 pursuits in 2024. Average distance 4.2 miles, average top speed 92 miles an hour. So that's kind of like the typical average pursuit.
But half of those may have been called off, correct?
Yeah, but the average was 92 miles an hour, 4.2 miles. So that would include the ones that were terminated, I would imagine, right? So, so from the liability standpoint, is there any sense if one of the thoughts I have, and so just to sort of preview maybe one of the proposals, would be to set up some kind of a external review or review process for any pursuit that resulted in property damage, injury, anything like that. We could kind of have an external review, which might help allay citizen concerns, but also I was thinking might help on the liability front. Do you have any thoughts on something like that?
I don't have any thoughts on that.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't.
No, that's okay.
Who would do that?
Who would?
Who would do that external review?
You have to pay a third party.
I mean, we're not qualified. I don't feel qualified to externally review.
I mean, there's external review of law enforcement actions all the time. But.
No, I understand that. I'm just wondering who would do that. Is that somebody, we have to hire an outside expert? I mean, I would add that too, that just, I think everybody remembers this in the pursuit that resulted in the young man's death on Woodland Circle. That was automatically reviewed by the state.
I contacted the Division of Criminal Investigation immediately upon finding out the results of that, and they conducted an investigation into the incident, which was turned over to the Dane County District Attorney's Office.
So, I mean, that one was, you know, the most egregious one, but there are mechanisms, I guess, like that.
Is that an example of a third party?
Well, so whenever there's what's can be classified, and it gets gray in some areas, but what can be classified officer involved shootings, there's gonna be a criminal investigation into those actions. Because the law is suspected to have been broken. Just because I'm a police officer, I can't legally kill somebody, right? There's exemptions that apply to me doing my job if I am put into an unfortunate circumstance where I would have to. But so there needs to be investigated from a criminal side before you proceed. And typically, procedurally, you wait until any criminal investigation is done and completed until you do any further type of an internal investigation from an administrative standpoint.
Any further questions for our village attorney?
Tanner, I have one quick question about that. Is that a citizen, or I don't know how to say it, a non-police review, or is it truly external? Is it like an internal review that's done in the police department, or is it, or a police, entity, or is it a non-policing entity? And I understand, I don't want to waste your time. It's a curiosity.
So you're talking about, so the agency that came in and did the investigation is the Division of Criminal Investigation under the Wisconsin Department of Justice. They are the state law enforcement agency who conducts criminal investigations. And they cover a lot of the officer involved shooting investigations throughout the state.
Thanks for clarifying that.
They were investigating if a crime's committed, not if a pursuit policy was violated, correct?
That is correct.
Yep. Understand. All right. Any further questions from the board?
So I have a question. This is Dennis Sullivan. So I'm looking at the report from that pursuit and accident or the death in 2022. And so item 13 says that this pursuit was in compliance with the pursuit policy. Is
Yeah.
that still, Tanner, is that still your belief?
That the pursuit
Followed policy.
didn't deviate from village policy?
Right.
Yes, it is my belief.
So as far as you're concerned, if a car makes a erratic move, which is not even a violation, described in that way, that would be appropriate basis for driving through the neighborhood at 75, 80 miles an hour on a Sunday morning. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that policy was reviewed and I've watched that video in comparison with our policy, and I don't believe that it would violated our policy. The characterization that I've heard come up a few times has been that an erratic move, and I believe that terminology came from the officer's report itself, was they observed the individual make an erratic move. What I observed occur on that was the officer observed this, they were traveling northbound on North Sherman Avenue, the vehicle was traveling southbound on North Sherman Avenue. The vehicle made a quick movement to turn onto Lakewood Boulevard that caught the officer's attention. The officer that then watched that vehicle as they proceeded to turn onto Lakewood Boulevard, and they observed that vehicle start to increase speed and go north on Kensington Drive. And increase its speed exceptionally. By the time that officer got to that intersection, before they had actually activated their lights and sirens, they could only see dust and the speed at which that vehicle was traveling. And so all those circumstances together caused the officer, or gave the officer, helped the officer make the decision to initiate a pursuit.
Is that in a written report?
Board, do you have a
All of
question,
those,
board, that we can ask in connection with liability concerns over our pursuit policy for us to address the village attorney? Because I'm not interested in a debate from November, an action that occurred in November 2022 that we've talked about at length. And I'm not interested in our Tanner village police chief being deposed with a Q&A over something that happened in 2022. So if you have a specific question that we can address the village attorney regarding liability, I'm happy to entertain that question.
well, my question is whether or not the current policy is consistent with the actions that occurred on November 20th, 2022. It's about the current policy. And I guess what
the answer was yes. I mean, that's been covered. This is ground that's been covered, and
okay.
so
Okay, so it's okay to drive 80 miles an hour through on a Sunday morning for somebody who has taken an erratic traffic move. So that's basically what you're saying.
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying we've discussed this in the past. It's been reviewed by council. It's been reviewed by not only village attorney, it's been reviewed by Tanner. It's been reviewed by the state. And I'm not
The
interested.
state only is looking for
I'm not
criminal
interested in
liability.
any further questions on the matter.
What,
If
you won't answer my question, so I guess that's fine.
I'm happy to answer it. I'm happy to have it answered by our attorney. I'm not interested in reviewing a matter that happened in 2022 on October 14th of 2025.
I'm just you rather than dig around for
I'm just asking if you
hypotheticals.
have a question. Do you have a question or not?
Yes,
And
my question is
it with respect to liability?
absolutely.
I haven't heard that question.
Given the facts as outlined in the report from October or from November 20th, 2022, do those facts are those facts consistent with the current police pursuit policy?
I believe that question has been answered.
Dennis, if you have a specific question that you'd like to direct to me, I'd be more than happy. You can send me an email and ask me the question and I'll work to respond to it.
Well, this is the question that I'm asking for the board to direct to the village attorney.
Oh,
Okay, so let me see if I can recite the question correctly. The action of November 2022.
Are you familiar with that?
I can't answer that because I'm not familiar with it.
Okay,
I haven't
thank
read
you.
the report.
Okay, thank you. Well, my understanding of that event was, again, it was reviewed by our chief of police. It was reviewed by village council. It was reviewed by the state. I'm not sure who else.
The DA.
The DA.
But not for policy. Those guys didn't review it for policy.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure. Fair question. We will take that up off. It sounds like we can't answer it right
But
now.
really, if you look at the report, it only looks like it's done by a supervisor and sent to another supervisor in Tanner. So the question is, who did review it?
oh, so I can tell you who reviews vehicle pursuits. Detective Sergeant Connect reviews every single vehicle pursuit that occurs. He then forwards that memorandum to me. And I review the memorandum and where it's pertinent and necessary, like if it's not an immediate termination, I will review it and go and watch the video as well.
And then nobody else. And that's what Dennis was asking.
That's his job. Okay. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.
Discuss 2026 budget and set public hearing date. Sarah.
So in your
Thanks,
packet,
Chris.
you will find all kinds of budget information. So the first item is the staff and benefits proposal for 2026. This outlines health insurance, dental insurance, retirement, disability insurance. This two-page document was reviewed by both the Personnel Committee and the Finance Committee prior to being brought before the board tonight. And again, this is just a preliminary review. At the end of all of this, we will set the public hearing date for final budget adoption in November. And the pages following the benefits are the 2026 wages. This shows a 3% increase to the wage step program that we implemented last year. You remember when we approved the referendum, we made it a 2-year spreading the dollars over 2 years. And so the last year was a compensation adjustment, and then we reserved 3% for each of the positions to implement in 2026. So those wages are reflected in this wage step. The amount that is budgeted each year for these positions is the step 10. So this shows you by employee, by position, where everyone is in their steps. So any questions about the wage step program, the 2026 wages? Those were also reviewed by personnel and finance. The next document is a memo from Tanner to the Finance Committee regarding a restructuring of the police department. This was reviewed by personnel and finance to be incorporated into the 2026 budget. And Tanner has spoke about this previously at the village board level.
And the last item before we can affect that change is a memorandum of understanding with the WPBA.
All right, and then we get into the Excel spreadsheet. So the page numbers are in the very bottom right corner. So that is page 1 is a summary.
Saying that for me.
Haven't expressed a little frustration during the personnel committee meeting with not having page numbers, so. Page 1 is a summary. These categories are set by the state of Wisconsin. This is how we report to them in a summary form, all of our revenues and expenses for the year. At the recommendation of the finance committee, I have included percentages next to all of the. To the right of all the 2026 budget amounts to show the difference. Increase or decrease from the 2025 budget to the 2026 budget. We'll get into the detail in the following pages, but. Revenues and expenses, revenues are over expenses about $739 for the year, considering our net new construction increase and then a couple of other adjustments to revenues for the year. So overall, almost a balanced budget for 2026 without any additional increases in recycling fees or wheel tax. We don't have to venture into that territory for 2026. On page 2, you'll see there's some yellow highlighting there. That is our net new construction number for 2026. Equals about just less than $25,000 for the year to add to our levy. The items in green are confirmed amounts for 2026. So as we get closer to the end of the year, all of our aids and supplemental payments from the state, we get those final numbers in and can plug those into the budget. We will be missing out on the expenditure restraint program for 2026. That's in the red box there.
So not everyone has color. Do you guys all have color copies? Okay, okay, sorry.
Expenditure restraint program, we won't qualify for that in 2026. Because of the referendum, our expenses increased over their threshold, which is a figure that's put out by the state each year saying if you keep your expenses under the consumer price index, then you can qualify for that additional payment. So we will qualify again in 2027. It's about $55,000. So we'll see that revenue back in next year. Going on to page 3, this is where all of our licenses, permits, law ordinance violations, recycling fees are listed on page 3. The dog and cat licenses are a pass-through expense. Well, the dog licenses are, we keep the cat licenses, but we have everything, about 75% of what we collect.
You ever check if people have their dog license? Asking for a friend.
I thought maybe you were volunteering to take on a new role here to make sure.
Your cat is an indoor cat. Does he?
Like to just be alone.
Russell can't do hard time.
All right, page 4, we are still in the revenue section. The interest on investments, you'll see that that has a significant increase. What I did for 2026 is I took what our levy was and calculated out a declining balance over 12 months, saying we would spend the same amount every month, which isn't going to happen, but which increased the revenue for interest on it, on the investments. There is an increase for the Maple Bluff Country Club rent, which is equivalent to the increase in our overall revenues, which is about 1%. On page 5, we are getting into the expenses. For those of you that have color, if it's shaded in gray or purple, that just means that it is related to wages or benefits. And if it is in gray, that means it's linked to another spreadsheet where I put those wages from the wage step in there. Off to the far right, you'll see there are some notes in each of those line items. Some of them are for me to remember what goes into those line items. Some of them are to note changes that we've made. Under the administrative salaries, you'll see this show up in the police department budget, but we are moving 75% of the records administrator, police administrative assistant, their wages and benefits to the police department budget from the administration department budget, just to more accurately represent how that position is being utilized. Sorry, I should have been asking. Any questions on the revenues?
I like your page numbers.
I'm
Be
just.
bigger.
They could be bigger.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the whole thing could have
Could
been,
be bigger.
I actually cut 2022 out of this to make it a little bit bigger, so it was a little bit easier to read. So I apologize for it, but you'll see, most of those increases in the expenses are at 2%. With the referendum, we did an overall 4% increase to all operating revenues, so we implemented 2% in 25 and then the other 2% in 2026. Another green box there at the bottom of page 5 for the insurance. Our policy renews on September 1st, so we have what those numbers are going to be for the next year. All right, and then just a continuation on page 6 of more insurance expenses. Page 7, the very first line, it's in orange for those of you that have color, but that shows the implementation of the change in the structure to the police department to have 1 sergeant, 1 lieutenant, 1 chief. Having the 2 sergeants, 1 chief structure. And again, you'll see that 75% of the admin assistant records administrator was transferred into the police department's budget. Questions on police? Holler if you need me to stop. Page 8 is fire department. And you'll see like there's 179% increase on line 225, but it really only accounts for about $130. So sometimes percentages are good and sometimes they can be a little bit deceiving. And again, with the supplies and expenses, there's a 60% increase, but it only increased $1,000. No major changes there. Page 9 is the streets department. You'll see on line 275, 52.5% increase. So in 2025, we implemented a new GIS system that is an online portal for administration and the Department of Public Works, both the supervisors and the field techs to access it in the field. So if they're out and about and they're testing a hydrant or they need to locate a water shut off, they can bring it up on their phone, on a tablet, and know exactly where that equipment is. And then they can also log information about maintenance. They can take pictures, upload pictures to it. So we switched to that in
Is that a piece of software? I mean, does it have a branded name?
ArcGIS,
RTI?
ARC, ARC, capital G, capital I, capital S.
And Esri is the specific
Yeah.
ESRI.
It's pretty much what everyone uses for.
I was gonna ask, some of the folks at the Regional Planning Commission if there's any other things that people are doing with it. I'd like to get all the zoning information somehow on it. I wanna find out if
It's a
they,
design question more than can it do it, is can it do it well and can you design it really well, I think. And our engineers, correct me if I get out over my skis on this. Our engineers are the ones who basically house it for us and manage it and do the data entry and manipulation. And I mean, there are like degrees, college degrees that you can have on ArcGIS and use of it. So like it's a very powerful tool,
Mhm.
but it can also get bogged down with things too. So design is really important when you consider it.
And right now it is just an internally used.
Right.
There is a public facing capability to it, but I think until we are more familiar with how it functions. Before we do that. So streets and solid waste are on page 9, page 10 is parks and culture and parks. No major changes there. Mark did request a slight increase to the fireworks. They may need a vendor change for 2026. And that was really the only Acres there. And page 11, this is the recreation budget. You'll see there's some yellow highlighting on this page. Mark and the Parks and Rec Committee are still working through the options to make Natalie's position the on a more permanent basis, so some of the funds may be reallocated should that go through.
And they have a meeting scheduled for.
Next
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I think we're really close.
Alright, and then the last thing is just the summary, the capital. And the debt service. Any questions on the operating budget?
Do you have a public hearing date in mind?
Well, we usually hold it at 7 PM the night of the board meeting, so
Next month,
yeah, November 11th at 7 PM.
and we don't need to take action on that.
You do need to officially set that, so let me just buzz through the capital and then. So then, after the operating budget, top of the page, it says capital, it's 4 pages long. For 2026. I think the only thing that I'm waiting for, and I know Tom sent an email, would be to replace the gym HVAC. So right now we're at 417,000 with the requests that are in so far for capital for 2026. Last year we borrowed 475,000 for capital.
Mostly for the fire truck, correct?
So that did not include the fire truck, so it included Tom's truck.
What's that?
Tom's truck
Oh,
is
Tom's
what the
truck.
majority of, the new garbage truck. Yeah, I'm blaming you. For, 2025.
We have a lot of garbage.
Okay, any questions, but sorry, I buzzed through that pretty quick, but you'll see it again next month.
So we need to take action on a date.
Yep.
And your proposal is to meet half an hour before our,
Start a half an hour before. Yes, put Christine on the tiger deadline.
She executes like she did today.
And what's that date?
The 11th.
November 11th. Move to set the public hearing for 7 o'clock, November 11th, 2025.
Second.
all in favor? We need to do something with this gym light funding.
So that would be under the parks, under
Thank you.
9F, that's a lot of those.
Committee reports. Christine.
Oh, fine. We had extensive building board. We had a couple windows, patio. The bigger ones where somebody's installing an outdoor sauna. And then there was a pretty extensive renovation to a house that was changed. And then there were 3 new builds approved, 416 Coleman, 309 Lakewood, and 55 Fuller. That's it.
Any debate on the rebuilds?
It was pretty straightforward. Yep, we had one comment that was sent in via email from a neighbor, but it was, yeah, it was pretty good. So two tear downs and 1 vacant lot, so.
That's busy.
Yeah, it's a lot of new stuff too, coming into the village, so improvements.
And the neighbor comment revolved around noise and start times for work. And under the new ordinances, there are literally decibel reading measures that are based upon timeframes. One is 10 PM to 7 AM. There's a quieter period, and then during day hours, there's a louder period. So 7 AM has been kind of the unofficial start time for work, given that change in decibel. some communities have, you can't work before such and such a time. We don't have an ordinance that's that specific. It's based upon sound and the,
How did the 7 a.m. time, how did we determine that, I guess?
I think, so it was in the code as it was written and presented to us and framed out by Mark Roffers. It was one of the points that we had identified as a point of interest within the community.
Mhm.
And I think it was kind of a balance
Mhm.
between not too early, not too late.
Right.
But I don't know that it was ever specifically discussed the time periods. I mean, I know
I'm
it
trying to think if
discussed,
there was a
but
carryover. We didn't really,
we didn't have any out times established other than at our parks.
that's true. So I'm guessing Mark took it, from other communities as kind of being a reasonable one. I have a vague memory of us briefly discussing it.
Mhm.
But it seemed reasonable. Do you think it's too early, too late?
Well, the 7 versus 8 a.m. How else feel about that, I guess,
Yeah.
depends on if you're a super early riser or not, but you have people who are doing a roofing project starting at 7
know.
a.m., that would be.
It's not your roof.
Same with the tax sale, the garage sales.
Yeah.
That's worse.
I know who really knows what it's like to live near construction. Your whole street.
Yes. Yes.
About pickleball.
Oh, damn.
How about leaf blowers now?
How about leaf blower?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, anyway, I just was wondering how the time was established, so.
We've, most of the time when we get concerns about noise in that regard, the really legitimate ones are like people who have kids. Kids are trying to sleep, things like that. So it's
Nobody else.
only when it's shared
legitimately
music.
You don't admit
Only when
that.
it's shared
You
music.
don't know.
Okay.
There's a backstory behind that.
Don't believe the country club committee has met, but I know the country club has completed their plan and we've asked them to, once they present it to the country club to present it to us. So that should be an agenda item for us. Finance and Accounts Committee met and they discussed the budget this evening. Greg,
Has not met.
Laura,
Has not met.
Parks and Rec.
We've met. We have a proposal, where's that here today? Yeah, it's so good. So it would be a funding request for the replacement of the gym lights. There's a number of gym lights. I know Mark put in quite extensive information about the replacement of these lights, replacement of 29 metal halide can lights in the gym that are currently not working. I think the idea is to replace the majority of them with this, with all these lights. The proposal is looking for some funding options from the infrastructure reserve for approximately $15,000 to make this replacement. Time is kind of the essence, given that we have a lot of activities that are starting to move into the gym, given the change of weather and basketball, youth sports, yoga, things like that. So the proposal is here. And
13,000, 15,000.
yeah.
And Mark, in what's in our packet, he had 3 or 4 options for funding it. Did
Yeah.
Parks take a position that they wanted to come out of infrastructure reserve because that's
Yeah.
not what he had in there?
Yep, that would be our first option, would come to the board and see if we can get it out of the infrastructure reserve. If that's not the case, then it would go back into parks and we would fund it.
And how much?
Out of
do we
pocket.
have in reserve?
1.2 million.
And this, I think it's appropriate, it goes along with the infrastructure of the buildings, things like that, and it benefits the community as a whole.
I think infrastructure reserve makes sense.
Move
And
to
these
approve.
lights that are not working now, they were original, right, to the building? which
Yeah.
has been
20.
25, 26 years.
Probably a
Yeah.
technical question, but are they gonna be covered so that kids aren't throwing basketballs at them to break them?
I think they're gonna be a little bit more durable than the ones that we currently have right now.
Have you looked at the hardware? Do you agree?
Anything would be an upgrade from what we had.
Okay, more durable too? Okay. Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Personnel committee has met, we discussed Rachel and we'll discuss that in closed session. Plan commission?
Met, in addition to the matter we talked about with the tattoo parlor, we also talked about possible tweaks to, the code. Including, policies regarding demolitions or tear downs and also some, a little bit more review on that language about what can go on, construction noise, traffic concerns, some kind of, do we need more limits and controls on that?
Thank you for your leadership on that. Police committee, did they meet? No. Public Works,
Has not met, to the point about, I really like your idea about staying on the markers. We aren't going to tackle anything regarding, the gateway plan or really anything else till the new year. So, and at that time, it'll probably be mostly, we're gonna get Mark's help with a little bit of the planning on getting public review on the plans because, while there were preferred concepts 10 years ago, that could all change.
urban forestry?
We met, last week, to discuss the trees on Fisk, the cottonwoods. It was just a discussion, we didn't take any action on that. We, talked about just keeping the policy as it stands. And then if we wanted to bring it up with the board as well. Tanner also talked about reviewing it with, legal. About some of the verbiage that we have, about specifically to the trees and the removal and the role that the village plays in some of these, older trees in the neighborhood.
So there were some legitimate and good questions about the ordinance and the interpretation of our ordinances that are written specifically in the urban forestry section. And in one of the paragraphs, it's a little bit ambiguous about the authority of the urban forestry committee and the urban forester in the removal of trees, and whether or not that would extend to the removal of trees in private property. And so I got a question into the legal counsel. I'm still framing out kind of what we're gonna get back from it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, that ordinance, the urban forestry committee doesn't direct the removal of trees. The village can remove trees if they would, if they want to, if they deem it appropriate in easements and rights of way. And also, the village can compel people to remove trees if they're deemed a nuisance. So that we do have a nuisance ordinance, but a nuisance would have to be declared affirmatively, and there's a process you go through to do that. And that puts the onus of financial responsibility on the property owner. So I'm getting all of the details from legal counsel kind of to provide feedback back to the urban forestry committee, village board, and the residents who had the questions, so that everyone's on the same sheet of music.
And it is, I think we did, agree that it is a unique situation, with those particular trees, so.
Thank you. Zoning Board of Appeals is not met, Board of Health is not met. Village President report, I did meet with the strategic plan core team, which is Mark Roffers and George Brown, Tanner, Sarah, and myself. My role is to be a board liaison. We're having our first meeting the 20th at 4:30, but it's only for an hour, right?
Yes. We are hoping to keep it at an hour.
Yeah, Christine, driving.
I nominate Christine to keep us on schedule for an hour. So hopefully, you've had a chance or we'll have a chance to review the, strategic plan process framework that Mark has put together for us, and there was a couple edits to it that we came up with at our meeting, but yeah, we're gonna have to be diligent to get this done by spring, and I'm confident we will. Sarah?
My board report and the financials are in your packet. We did complete our workers' compensation audit today, as painful as it was, but we made it through, and Brenda was a great help to me today in getting that taken care of.
What is the most painful thing you do as village deputy administrator?
What is the most painful
Other
thing?
than dealing.
You're being recorded.
I choose not to answer this.
Good response.
That's all I have.
All right. Tom?
Well, it seems like summer was just leaving. And I think we're gonna get into the fall and a change of season. We're preparing with that, with leaf collection and preparing for winter, which will be on the heels of the other. Message to residents about making an appointment to get us in for those endpoints for the water meters. We put in a base for a memorial bench at the beach. The bench should be on the 7 days of curing, possibly Friday. We might.
And how were you guys challenged by that process?
How did we?
Well, you said in your note, in your summary, you said that
Well, you know, we haven't done any flat work, but I do have a guy
Everybody's got a
on
guy.
staff who has worked with.
concrete.
Yeah, and it came out really well.
It's a memorial for who or what?
I don't have any-
Shirley Levine.
Yeah, Shirley, what's it?
Levine.
Levine.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. So,
Henry Anderson.
Mhm.
His wife.
Okay.
Oh,
corner of Roxbury and
Yeah.
Lakewood.
across from.
There is a little bit of her in the mix.
Wow,
Is
it's
it?
amazing.
I won't even.
I wish I didn't know that.
No.
So that's what that was a gold tooth. Thought it was.
You see sparkle, you know.
Good one. All right.
My mom specifically said, take her teeth when she.
That's what I got.
Tom?
That's good.
Recreation and Municipal Services Director.
Mark isn't
Mark
here this
isn't
evening,
here.
but I think we've already taken action on his
Yeah.
item, so
Yep.
all the other information's in his packet.
Jeff, I'll turn Jeff on.
Jeff, you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you.
Sorry, for some reason it's not allowing me to access my camera here. My packet is included, and some of the highlights here I wanted to go over. Continuing to track certain things, especially with response times. Our response times in October were 4 minutes and 23 seconds from the time of alarm to on-scene times. A couple of the calls I took out because I didn't feel that those were exactly fair to track for our times, or was someone showing up at our station, because that's a response time of 1 second. Live fire training last month went off really great at Madison College. It was our team's third opportunity this year to do live fire training. And as you could see when you're walking in, this month we're doing vehicle extrication with the 2 vehicles outside. Those are going to get cleaned up, and then we have open house, and then we're bringing in an additional 2 vehicles. So that way all of our shifts will get multiple opportunities to train on vehicle extrication this month. We're also going through EMS documentation, changing some things up there with our medical director and our billing company. I just received an email this last week that our billing company is restructuring their team, which means they're restructuring for us who our people are going to be. So Sarah and I have been emailing those people. We're going to try and set up a meeting now with the new team that we have coming on board, and we will see how that goes. Another update, we're changing our hiring process when we bring on new people. I always had this pie in the sky dream of having a task book for people, but making it electronic so that we can better track people as they're going through their probationary period with us. So we came up with a process that's going to be kind of interesting. A lot of our equipment will have QR codes on it in kind of inconspicuous places where people can, on their own, scan it, go through it, and we can document that they've gone through the training on their own with the equipment, aside from being checked off at later points. It just gives us more contact for them to make sure that they know what they're doing with the equipment and they've seen it multiple times and been checked off multiple times. Delivery of new engine is going to be early November. It's going to be delayed a little bit, and that's fully on me because we are making them create something that they haven't done before. Aside from the training that they're taking our driver operators through, we are making them come up with a maintenance program for us that we can do outside of the annual DOT inspections. When I first talked to our rep about it, I told him there's got to be things that you can have for us that we can do weekly, monthly, quarterly to better take care of the maintenance in between those annual checks. We do things we know that should happen, but I'm sure that the people who are engineers and diesel mechanics can point us in a better direction. So we are going down the last week of October to get some training, and that's when they're going to give us this new maintenance program that they are creating for us. As I mentioned before, our open house is this Saturday from 8 a.m. to noon. We had a car seat installation last month. It was very well received. They actually had to extend the hours for it. They did 21 checks on currently installed vehicles. They also provided 11 to income qualifying families. And following the event, they asked us if they could schedule us again for March. Following COVID, they were kind of kicked out of fire stations, and understandably, but it never really changed, and they really haven't been allowed to come back to a lot of fire stations. And it sounds like we are one of the few that has allowed them to come back and do it. They like our setup, and they wanted to do it again with us, so they're going to be coming back again in March. And that is all I have.
What was the upgrade to the fire truck that you requested?
It's the maintenance program. That's what we're requesting them to put together for us. I told them that when we came down there to do the final inspection, that we wanted to have a maintenance program put together, that their engineers have looked over their diesel mechanics for the longevity of the vehicle, just to protect the investment and make sure that our folks are trained on it who are going to be driving the apparatus on the daily.
Jeff, I have a question for you, and actually a comment too. So, with the two homes that are gonna be torn down for new builds, we did request both homeowners to communicate with you to see if you could mutually find a time that you guys could practice on, and do some training on the homes before they're torn down. So I don't know if you connect with Tanner to get that, I don't know how that works, but just as a heads up for you. And then, secondly, well, where do you get the cars from? I saw the two cars in the parking lot. It's kind of crazy.
So we get them given to us by different tow companies. We kind of spread it out. One time I go here, and then once I've used that up, I go to the next place for a little bit. So I kind of spread them out. So I'm not asking the same place over and over because we do understand that it is a drain on them. They have to pull fluids on them. They have to make them safe for us to use. So if we use a place one year, we try to not use them the next year, go to a different place. On the training in the houses, we're happy to do those. Those give us really good opportunities. There are limitations to what we can do in them for safety perspective. In the past, we've had people ask about doing live fire trainings. I've done those a lot, but there are a lot of problems with those, especially when you are in a very close proximity to other structures, and there are certain concerns that I just would not feel comfortable. Outside of that, though, there's a lot of training that we get out of those whenever we can, and it'll be put to good use.
Good.
Yeah, Jeff, and I can sync up with you to make contact with those property owners.
Okay, sounds good.
Tanner?
My report is in your packet. Staff have been, we've got a lot of different projects ongoing right now, from Brenda's driving the updating our employee manual, Tom's team knocking out the water meters. We have a strategic plan coming up and gearing up for that. Thank you everyone for making yourselves available for that. Mark's really working to expand fall programming. We're shooting for 100% performance evaluations this year, which will be the first time that that's ever occurred, as far as I know. Got a number of different grants, specifically for the police department. In the last month or two, we had a relief donation for an MB for one of our officers. We had a injury donation to a Madison Police Department officer who was injured from the foundation, and we had a approved individual grant for advanced leadership training. So we're really, for the foundation, looking towards 2026 and making sure that we're making the best out of that resource for our officers to enable and support our team into 2026. Working also with Mark on following up on cybersecurity improvements. You know, cybersecurity is one of those things that's an ever-present threat, and you're constantly working to try to just improve your posture, risk mitigation. And we'll be working on updating the website. With the transition from the new zoning code, there have been a number of updates that we need to make sure reflect on, like, the building board page, the proper forms are up. You know, it sounds simple, but we've got to work through a third party to get the website the way we want it to be. So little things like that, we're just continuously chipping away at all at one time. Otherwise, my reports in your packet, also in the packet are the notable calls, Jay's report, and the statistics for the month. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Do you have any money in the training budget for the police department for officers to get take Spanish lessons if they want them?
Officers could take Spanish lessons without any money.
Okay.
It's a time question with, especially with the language.
I noticed that Zach is a little bit conversant in Spanish, and he made use of it on the, frequently on the ride along that I
It
was.
isn't infrequent that I turn into the interpreter in the front office, so.
Yeah, I see Zach is on the call, and I'm remiss. I did a ride along, as did you, and I know you have, Laura, and you've done one and you're scheduled.
Tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Lily will be scheduled. Thank you, Zach, for your professionalism. It was very eye-opening and interesting. So I'll be curious to once we all do it, get some perspective. Discuss and take action on the claims list.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving to closed session as permitted by Wisconsin statute section 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of public employees over which the governmental body has jurisdiction to discuss resident services specialist or clerk.
So moved.
Seconds.
All right. All right.
Let's move that we give the job to Rachel.
Second.
Offer the job to Rachel.
Yeah.
So to be clear, it's
Grant the waiver to the
One-time
mechanism
waiver.
of the one-time waiver.
Okay, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.